Welcome back to Boondogglers, episode 3. Cov, what are we talking about?
Yo, we are very close to a scary moment in America. And I'm terrified. We're probably going to know in
It's election day
4 hours. Yeah,
2020.
it's election day 2020. And in my city, right down the street from me, they have literally been boarding up stores and stuff ahead of it. They've been doing it for like 2 days with plywood and it's kind of crazy. They're expecting like a riot situation, and I am thinking, maybe there would be a riot no matter who wins, but got me thinking, what would be the worst case scenario? Civil war. And what would a civil war look like in America now compared to 160 years ago? Kind of a big question, but I've just past couple of days I've been thinking, like technology has changed. Who in America has the guns? Who in America is where are they located, and what kind of assets would they be going after? What would it look like?
Yep. I reached out to my friend who's an Antifa super soldier last night, and I said, basically, how dumb do you expect LA to go if Trump wins? She said dumb. Yeah, man, I feel you. I tend to think that for me the most useful way to think about it is that the war has already started, and what can we look around and say, yes, this is that.
Right. It's a version of it. Here I am.
I think, people imagining, the last Civil War happening now, World War I happening now, World War II happening now, even like a Fallujah style urban conflict happening now, and like none of it models what we would see.
Right. It wouldn't look like that at all.
But a ballot box was burned in inner city Boston and here in MacArthur Park.
Wow, I didn't hear
LA.
about that.
That strikes me as an op. That strikes me as, a plan that was born on far-right message boards.
Sure.
These folks are, kind of tactically LARPing, and it's moving over from LARPing into ops.
Yeah.
There's seems like graffiti went up overnight all over the country, including some that I saw with my own eyes 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
Which was red spray paint. It says, "Don't vote, work for revolution," and it has a hammer and sickle, the old Soviet logo.
Wow.
And in my opinion, that just reeks of a far right message board bred op.
Totally.
Because folks on the left aren't in the habit, I've noticed, of linking like the failed Soviet experiment with the concept of socialism for America.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a far right talking point, So to try to, at one time, actually maybe get some folks, some radical leftists, not to vote because they see that and get inspired, but more at the other time to basically be a false flag information attack. So they're basically trying to speak for Antifa in a belligerent way that would scare suburban folks and stuff.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, the scale of some of these riots that we've seen, if you could just imagine that in every single city, which, I mean, honestly, it's been in every single major city. But if we can just picture that days on end, twice as big, frickin' more violent, I mean, that would be a pretty serious civil war. That would get, I mean, it's very possible, we're getting closer every day.
No, you're right. No,
to that kind of situation. I'm talking like civil war, like what would that, the seriousness of.
Okay. Let's imagine that. What would it really look like?
Right.
So you remember in Portland, you had, federal officers, pulling people into unmarked vans.
Yeah.
Without badges.
Yep.
They were saying, well, the vans need to be unmarked because the people torch police vehicles that we
Right.
bring in. Um, so yeah, let's imagine a longer state of riots and like a more unbridled law enforcement response where
Yeah.
um, where you'd have Bill Barr and Trump sending in federal prison riot control SWAT style
Right.
officers, everyone they can find, maybe even ICE, and just
Mm.
maybe that's what the lines would look like. We've already seen cops like giving water to white militias,
Yeah.
expressing support. So maybe the lines would start to look like that. You wouldn't see flashpoints in rural areas, but maybe you'd see white militias as well as maybe young leftists from the rural areas go into the cities
Right. It would
to
definitely be
kind of
urban combat. And it would be the people versus the state and the people versus the radical right, I think is what it would look like.
I feel you, but
Because
I
there's
think
been a
that
common trend of the state and the right, really patting each other's backs.
yeah, you're totally right. You're totally right. However, what I think that misses is that a lot of folks who are Republican and also especially who have been radicalized to kind of this new, just a kind of cultish ideology that's taken over the GOP. A lot of them are poor. They are literally oppressed
Yeah.
by the economy. And so, in a sense, they're the people too.
Yeah.
It's not as if it's not so simple anymore. It's not as if corporate America is just standing with like the motorcades. Do you know what I mean? That are happening, that are like bumping
Right.
into the Biden bus, and
Right.
I think the money, the complicated money split is what is my only pushback to like that the people versus
Right.
the government or something like that.
Right. Right. Right.
Because when you live in a manufacturing town and all the manufacturing is gone, and your grandparent and your parent both had good jobs in this lifestyle and they raised you in it, and now it's impossible. Um, like you're the people too.
Sure. Sure. Um, but those people are supporting. Well, I don't want to. I don't want to say all those people, but a large majority of those people that are supporting Trump. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's pretty ironic, or pretty ironic. Um, so I also got thinking, the left really doesn't really have that many guns. So if it turned into a left versus right situation, one would just be like incredibly militarized already. And what would happen with that? Like literally, most people in my city, like my city is kind of an island
Yeah.
in a sea of rednecks. No, it's kind of an island in the sea of majority right, and we don't really have that many guns here. Would it just be like a straight up slaughter? Like, I mean, we wouldn't be able to defend ourselves. And if even if the state is with them too, I mean, theoretically, the left could just be frickin' crushed.
That's interesting. That is interesting.
Like just taking it to
get,
just like the farthest,
Totally.
imaginable.
You get zones like the Chop Zone in Seattle getting set up, kind of like Occupy Wall Street on steroids,
Yeah.
happening in urban areas.
Yep.
You get armed folks on the right flooding in to reinforce this this like bouquet of different government agencies, from local cops all the way up to whatever federal resources Trump and Bill Barr might send.
Right.
And you get a moment where use of force happens, and it literally happens between ARs and like Molotovs.
Yeah.
And that's like not a fair fight.
No.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I see I think one thing that to me influences my thinking about any possible American revolution or conflict like this is just the extent to which America is not one place. Like when Egypt rose up in 2010, 2011, and the focus of their protests was, I'm going to butcher the word, but Tahrir Square. Like that was the historic center of the one capital of this one nation, which I'm sure this could be complicated, but generally speaking was small enough to be centralized around the capital. And
Right.
basically imagine if America was Texas or something like that.
Right.
I think that anything that happens in America that can be deemed like an American event and not like a Minneapolis event or something, it has to be on par with like every country in Europe rioting at the same time.
Yeah.
Because you get like France burns like every other season, it seems like.
Right.
And, you'll see isolated protests and stuff like that. And or you'll see individual countries kind of go up in Europe. But I think a lot of times in America we tend to be like America's a country and Belgium's a country. So like a Belgian revolution would be a thought experiment for an American revolution.
Right.
And I just think that our size and like our geography, complicates that to an extent. So
Yeah.
So let's play the situation out like you were saying. Like, okay, let's say we had like an Occupy Wall Street that then like needed to get crushed. Do you see any 2020 or 2021 where that's something that like happens in more than half the states at once? Or do you think that if that happened in Seattle, it would qualify for this like Civil War
Yeah.
term?
Well, the term Civil War, it maybe wouldn't be the right word. I mean, that may not even be, it may not be the right word at all. But I think that if something were to go down, I mean, in any major city, I mean, well, let's take Minneapolis, for example. That was kind of an American event, you know what I mean? Like, that was a huge American thing that happened. I don't think people just call that the Minneapolis thing. Like, everyone in America felt that.
Even globally, there were protests.
Yeah.
In support.
Right. So, I think that even if it was just like one city occupied, I think that it would trigger a whole bunch of other cities to do the same. If I understood your question.
Got you. So that well, that is a good answer. That basically America is more than one place, or it is more one place than I'm giving it credit for. And if folks were open, like if there was live rounds used against protesters from the state in any city, then all the other cities would like triple their rage, and it would just auto trigger.
Right. Yeah, it would be explosive. Other thing is, this kind of situation where the right comes in with all their arms and just starts destroying stuff, causing an uprising. That would really only happen if Biden were to win. They wouldn't do that if Trump were to win. Because if Trump were to win, they kind of win there. There's no reason for them to then be upset. You know what I mean? And the left I don't think is going to cause nearly as much. No one's really going to get shot if Trump wins, in my opinion. Because what's the left going to do? They're not as malicious as the right.
I disagree. The left is the well, maybe not about the malicious, but the left is the group that turned up first to this summer.
Well, right.
And so I think that.
But more in
like
a protest
I asked
form, less in like a war form.
Well, yes, but that's how you see it. But also, folks on the right felt like those protests were violent. And even though it's violence against property, their nihilistic ideology leads them to equate property with life. So what they're feeling is that, oh, like, thugs took over an American city. Then the white militias respond to shore up law enforcement. So that's what I see happening. I
Right.
see if so like when I texted my friend, I said, if Trump wins, how far do you see us going? I didn't even consider a Biden one. So that's interesting. I don't think the white militias. Well, I actually I hadn't considered that at all.
I think that the
But the
Biden
whole.
win would be way more destructive. I think that the Biden, I think Biden's going to win, and I think we're going to see more shit from Biden winning than we would if Trump were to win.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, I will bet against you there. I think that.
Because imagine the
that
left.
if
Look
Trump,
what the left did. Look what the left did, and they are far less capable of, they have less arms than the right. Like look at what the left did, and then imagine the right is in that same situation. The ones with all the guns, the ones that are blocking off freeways in Texas, the ones that are ramming fucking Biden bus. You know what I mean? And they haven't even been pissed off yet. You know what I mean? They haven't even lost yet. So I'm just imagining that would be just far more violent if Biden wins.
Interesting.
I mean, I may be totally wrong, but that's how I see it. So I'm expecting, I'm not expecting full-on civil war like I'm humoring right now, but I'm definitely expecting some big stuff to go down.
Interesting. See, I what started the wave of protest this summer was the killing of George Floyd. I mean, it's always one thread in a fabric of murders, but
Right.
there was one traumatic moment, which was that to lose a presidential election. I was gonna say that I don't know if you can equate the two in terms of like trauma to a community, but if you have Trump lose and you have him telling them, you just watched American democracy break. That's what he's telling them.
Yeah.
That is kind of a 9/11 moment.
Yeah.
That is kind of a like, well, we need to fix it now
Yeah.
moment. So I completely hadn't even. I mean, to me, the whole story I had been picturing up until this point was Trump wins, young people and the left riot, loot, potentially more intensely than after Floyd's murder. White militias reinforce law enforcement. And that
I mean, I think you're right about
I
that. I think you are right about that. I think that is definitely, definitely would look like that if Trump were to win. I just think it would be more violent if Biden wins.
Totally.
But yeah, go on.
I went in a circle with my roommate recently and kind of came to I was thinking this thought, because I was talking to him about how 8 years under Obama in a sense gave us Trump. I mean, it's much bigger than that, but he was a manifestation of this kind of anger, and ultimately I think
Sure.
this kind of feeling like folks were under the heel of the left for those 8 years. And part of me was thinking, was like nervous about what, for example, 8 years under Hillary would have done to that diamond of hate. And a thought process like that, it kind of leads you to be like, well, what is better for the country? Maybe letting Trump crash and burn for another 4 years would deal like the death blow to Trumpism.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way of looking at it.
It's a way of looking at it, but I'm backing off from that, because I think what we've seen is that nothing emboldens hate as much as the president going out there and saying it's fine.
Yeah.
And here's a really interesting one for you. What this really blew my mind last night. Ded basically said, if let's say Biden and Kamala crush Trump, and you get kind of like the most maximally butthurt form of militias on the right
Hmm.
that now feel like their country is so in jeopardy that they take up arms, that violence of course would be regrettable, because all violence is, but may actually almost, and this is kind of what I turned his idea into, almost like cauterize the bleeding, like show the nation, show the international community, who they really are and how critically cancerous this ideology is.
Yeah.
Force old school Republicans to make a stand. Are you on the side of like KKK style GOP, or are you on the
Right.
side of like George Bush style GOP?
Right.
And force those lines together. So of course, I would never ever recommend a policy that would lead to violence, because I think the ecosystem needs the violence and that it will lead to peace. I think that's kind of flawed, but it also means that maybe avoiding violence at all costs is not the best way to go about it. And that is kind of how it started with Hitler, was like appeasement. And appeasement was like a notorious failure. We said, okay, he took over, I believe, first a small part of Austria, if I'm correct. And the international community said, okay, maybe best not to make him mad. And we're going to like let that slide. That's appeasement. And that is now like a known failing strategy.
Right.
And made everything worse. And so that's kind of, that Dead kind of blew my mind with that too. Basically being like, maybe avoiding violence from these people is not necessarily the fastest path to healing society.
Yeah, I mean, that is, they would really show themselves to the world and people. Yeah. It's kind of actually, I think it was either on your stream or maybe I DM'd you or something, but this, I believe it was like a young autistic boy, I think, I may be wrong about that, was shot by police and killed. And I said, look, take this in the, understand me as well as you can, but as terrible as this could be a point where everybody can look at this and say, okay, yeah, police brutality is like this is the tipping point. Like they're gonna shoot a mentally challenged young boy. And your response was, that's not the right kind of, it shouldn't, well, I don't remember exactly what you said, but it shouldn't take something that bad to wake up the people. It shouldn't have to go to that to, or I can't remember, you had something about that, and it changed my mind, is basically what you did. Do you remember what that was?
I don't remember, but what it makes me think of is would basically be a response, which is like, maybe recognizing that energy can come from these like terrible events. It doesn't mean you would ever, ever, ever take any action to encourage them.
Right.
And there's a name for that, which is called accelerationism.
That's what it was.
Which, yeah, and accelerationism basically says we need things to get worse so that they can get better.
Right.
So let's like hurry up and get things worse. Like an accelerationist might set forests on fire in California to force better
Right.
policy around climate change.
So that's actually the exact word I was looking for, accelerationism. Do you think
Yep.
that allowing the right to just go full extreme and show themselves to be, a militia to the world and force people to take a side, do you think that would be a version of accelerationism?
Well, I think if you felt like the alt-right was moving towards violence and there's something you could take to bring that along, then yes. If I'm right that it's white supremacists who did the Marxist graffiti, don't vote, work for revolution, then they are literally practicing their own version of accelerationism.
Right.
Where they are actually putting up propaganda for the enemy. because they think this conflict needs to happen and serves the nation to happen.
Right.
So I'm pretty strictly against it as a way to imagine policy and guide imagined policies. However, I think that a small drop of it, not when you prescribe what you think should happen, but when you're describing what you see, is actually helpful in modeling what you see and helpful just from a mental health standpoint. Like, I'll say it just again. When we're looking at the world and thinking about what needs to happen, it is, I think, typically misguided and evil to say things need to get worse before they get better, so let's make things worse first. And if you are unable to see any good that can come from a negative event, then you are missing a significant part of the picture, and you'll be too depressed. And you won't deserve to be depressed because there are silver linings. And it's important to be able to hold both in your mind. So when we take that child who was murdered, as an example, I think it's important to imagine that as an event that can move the country forward. Because if you don't, the world is too bad to even engage with. And at the same time, you are missing an opportunity.
Right.
But that's just a drop. That's just to help us find the next foothold as we stumble from crisis to crisis.
Right.
That is not like how we go about fixing things. And that's why I think another 4 years for Trump would snowball Trumpism more than Trump getting, either beat by a little or beat by a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, because there's certainly more hate in this country now than there was when Obama was president.
That's like the test.
Yeah.
But basically what informed a lot of my thinking. So in 2016, when Trump was elected, was when I was reading Dune and all the Dune books, and the fourth Dune book is probably the one I was in during the election, and it's about, I'll be vague, it's about a leader who can see the future, lives for 4,000 years, and steers all of humanity on like a universal level along this narrow path that he sees in the future that will keep us from wiping ourselves out. And his vision is so accurate and his timescales are so long that he'll take an action such as put an evil, oppressive governor in charge of a planet, because in 300 years, he needs that planet's people to have a strong revolutionary spirit. And so he kind of operates on these ultra-long generational timescales where he's like, well, if I make the next 6 generations of life hell on this planet, it will produce warriors of the caliber that all need to liberate this much bigger planet. It's all part of the plan.
That does sound like Warhammer.
Warhammer.
That's insane, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so everything I've ever Wikipedia'd about Warhammer just strikes me as the later Dune books.
Yeah.
So it might have just been that for me, when he was elected, that book and the political thought on generational timescales that Frank Herbert explores in that book kind of maybe became a crutch for me, or was very useful to me, where I was trying to imagine not just the next 4 years of Cataclysm, but how it could play into like a history of pendulum swings in the next century. And I don't know, that so reading that book at that time, it kind of set me on, I'm not going to say an accelerationist way of looking at things, but it became my way of dealing with Trump in the first couple of years, that I was like, well, just there's a chance that in the grand scheme, Hillary would have been worse because she would have hardened that diamond. Those
Yeah.
people that were furious about being governed by a black president are now governed by a woman, and go from furious to psychotic or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think it's dangerous. It's dangerous to go too far down that
Yeah.
road.
Yeah. It is dangerous. Good. Yeah. Because. Yeah, I really. It's interesting to think about. I really do wonder what would be worse, what would accelerate their hate more if another 4 years of what they don't like, or another 4 years of what supports their their
Yep.
mentality. In my opinion, I think that the 4 years of Trump would definitely be worse, and has been
Yeah.
worse. And I think that the longer we keep people in office that are suppressing that hate, then the closer and closer we get to, those people just start to dwindle and die out. But man, there are a lot in America. I mean, it really they came out of the frickin' woodwork. I am shocked of how many people. I mean, in my city, we were driving around, and there's a bunch of Biden signs in my part of town. And when we crossed into the more wealthy part of town, frickin' Trump signs everywhere. It was. I haven't been over there in like a couple months, and it's just Trump. It's shocking, crazy. So actually, I mean, I know my city's majority left, but that little pocket, it's just, you would never expect those people to be so supportive of Trump. It's crazy.
Yes. My dad always says this thing, and he's quoting someone else. I think he's quoting Karl Marx. A capitalist will sell you the rope for their own hanging. And it's true. It's like when I say that climate change is real and we need to adapt, I feel like that's a completely capitalistic statement. Just capitalism on like not month-long timescales. Like capitalism, at least along my own life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these guys are so greedy, they will literally sell you the rope that you're gonna hang them with.
Yeah.
Not even the rope for their kids hanging. It just boggles the mind. But the thing is that short-term thinking, it works well enough to make folks that use it money.
Yeah.
And so that's what you see.
Gosh, yeah, short-term thinking. I mean, honestly, just that, simply, short-term thinking is so dangerous. I'd like to think that I don't do that. Or I do, but I would like to think that I don't for the world. Yeah, that's actually something I think about quite often, is how could people be so greedy that they just think about the money that they're going to make in their lifetime? Like, I can't even imagine myself in that situation where I would value money over, like, for example, the health of the environment. I would never do that. And I just can't understand how people do. Like, I do kind of understand it in a way, but at the same time, it's mind blowing that people can think that way.
Imagine hunger.
Well, I think that, sure, but I think once you have all the food in the entire world and you continue to do it for years, and like, for example,
Yeah.
Shell, or Chevron or whatever, they knew they were destroying the environment for 50 years, and they kept doing it, and now they're finally, like, on Twitter, like, help us, make good decisions or whatever. But they know what they've been doing for years, destroying the environment for money. And I think it's beyond hunger at that point. I just think it's
Yeah, the folks up at the top.
the folks at the top are
It
just
doesn't
straight
come from
evil. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think a way to make it make sense is not to think in terms of, like, transcendent truth. Like, how could this be true to them? Because it's so wrong to me.
Hmm.
I think the way to make it make sense is to think of it in terms of Darwinism. What behaviors will lead to the accumulation of wealth? And those are the behaviors that you will see at the top.
Right. Yeah. 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 Very true. Very true.
Which is why capitalism needs help incentivizing long-term thinking.
Yeah.
Because when you incentivize short-term thinking and long-term thinking, what you'll see more of is short-term thinking because it works fine.
Right.
And you have to be less smart to do it. The bar is lower
Right.
to achieve that. So it will just rise to the top. So I don't even I'm even tempted to identify as a capitalist. I just think that what you need is robust regulation that incentivizes generational timelines.
Yeah.
And I yeah,
Totally.
it just blows my mind because it's still greedy.
Yeah.
It's still greedy. Like it's at a certain point the evil is appalling, but then on another level the incompetence is what's appalling. It's like, do you realize that if the fossil fuel industry like full scale embraced a renewable future, that would only be leading to their heinous conquest of that future and like satanic death grip on that market.
Yeah.
Like that would shore up their power. Like evil works well enough, I think, to keep the world improving as long as you're evil and smart. As long
Yeah.
as your greed operates on a long enough timeline.
Right. Like, a lot of those oil companies are now starting to finally go in the direction of renewable energy because some of them are smart and they're finally starting to become smarter. But why didn't they do that? Freaking why haven't they been doing that? Why isn't it taking this long? I mean, I know the technology is now starting to come out, but still, yeah, it really is. They're like evil and smart. They really don't care about how they're doing it. They're just caring about the most efficient way to do it.
Yep.
And yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's craziness.
Yeah, I mean, Darwinism helps think of that stuff in terms of like pressures. Like as opposed to like why are they not planning out this strat? More like what are the pressures on them? And it's like for all of us, like as a human being, the pressures to think on a long time scale they're less felt than the immediate pressures.
Mm-hmm.
You have to practice that. And in general, I'm very bad at that. I worry about my next hour and the end of my day, and that's pretty much where most of my thinking goes. I'm very bad with long term planning, so I can understand the emotional journey of that type of thinking because
Sure.
I do long term thinking very little myself, but
But if you were put in the well, sorry. I interrupted.
well, what's your question?
Well, I was just saying, if you were put in the situation where you had to use long-term thinking because the outcome would be so, important as like climate change or something like that, you would obviously take the long-term solution. But something like just thinking about your next meal, something like that outcome isn't as important as, it's not like it's going to do like some detrimental effect to the world. I mean, I get it. It's the same mindset, but still, it is. There's a line, and
I think for me, it's the line does not exist without pressure, and I wish it did. But like for example, like the worst case scenario, even on a selfish level, the worst case scenario of like my own financial existence totally collapsing is like very, very bad. Like it takes away all the things I love. And I don't save. I don't I don't, take a job that would suck a little more of my energy to ensure my freedom in the future.
mm-hmm.
So when I'm thinking about my own life, without like, so when Corona first hit, and like there was no unemployment, and like my job like immediately dried up, and everything was super scarce. That was pressure on me because I was even thinking about my meal that night. And so I started saving very well and not wasting any food and stuff. And that was once I felt the pressure.
Right.
But at least for my mind, I am not sure that I'm cognitively like mature enough to operate on those timescales yet without pressure. Now look, if the shit hit the fan and, we were in a Walking Dead scenario and I was, leading a scrappy band of folks, the pressure would be on me, and I'd be making the choices that kept our band alive on a years and years timeline when other warlords were just thinking about water today and stuff like that.
Right.
But without those pressures, and like by pressures I basically mean like Darwinistic pressures, like existence level threats, because a concept alone cannot force me into sanity. I can understand how corporate America and the powers that be are the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish it wasn't true.
Yeah. No, I definitely see where you're coming from, and I agree. But in a Walking Dead situation, I think the clan that Chevron owns would be the one that's frickin' killing the other poor little guys, for their water and stuff. And and my clan certainly wouldn't be doing that. So there's
right.
obviously,
Right.
I'm still seeing that line, where, I guess that's just where the evil comes in, there's just, you have to be evil to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I want to strive for a unified practice of good and evil. And I think that the most brilliant leadership moves in any circle throughout history are moments that are altruistic and selfish at the same time. And there's one band of survivors that doesn't let anyone in and just kills and takes, or at least kicks to the curb, everyone they come across. And then there's another band that meets a survivor and says, oh, here's maybe someone that we can absorb, assimilate, basically like pillage them for their knowledge and use them as another set of hands to build our palisade. And that is selfish too, but it's a type of selfish that now gives this second pair of hands shelter.
Sure.
And you're still looking to kind of colonize that person and control, and even you could say enslave to your system. But it's just, I think that evil on long enough timelines looks like good, and I maybe that's just a guess, and I haven't thought the idea out enough.
Well, yeah, there has to be a degree of selfishness to survive. But yeah, when does that selfishness start to become evil?
Right. Well, I guess evil's a tricky word, because it kind of implies some type of pure bad for its own sake. It kind of implies like taking glee in harming others and stuff like that. So maybe I'd prefer to say, I want to believe in a unified theory of selfishness and altruism. That's easier to say.
Yeah.
Let me adjust my I took my camera off. Off automatic exposure. Sun's just going down here.
Yeah, you got some cool lighting going on.
Yeah, I know. Today's crazy.
There we go.
Yep.
Perfect.
Let me while I'm using my mouse and keyboard, let me pull up a see if there's any results.
Oh yeah. Gosh.
Before we go anymore. Because I was going to ask you if there is no results, before we really have information, just to predict it.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing the numbers 13 next to Donald Trump and 3 next to Biden. I don't know what that means, but that's scary.
Well, early
Biden
on, you don't know.
Oh, never mind. Well, we'll be able to tell if Biden takes out like Florida, or Texas or Pennsylvania, it's pretty much over for Trump.
So while we can't tell, what are you predicting?
I think Biden's going to win. And I have a couple of reasons why. The main reason is a stupid reason, and that's because I know nothing, and I went on YouTube and I looked up a dude who has predicted the elections for the past 50 years. Perfect every time. He gets it right. He has like a whole list breakdown, and he's like super smart. Wait,
Look,
do you
if
know?
You guess Trump, you're ahead of everyone.
Oh yeah, he guessed Trump
last time. Yeah.
Yeah, and he says Biden 100%. So
really,
he said that back in August too. So hopefully he's right. And but we saw a situation where we thought Hillary was we were positive Hillary was going to win the night before, and then frickin' Trump won. So
night of.
God knows what's going to happen.
And I'll ask you for another prediction. You say Biden wins. Do you say a salty but ultimately legal concession, or do you see some lack of concession from Trump?
Well, first of all, who do you think is going to win?
I think Biden is going to win by historic margins. That's my prediction.
And your other question. I don't know. I mean, Trump is definitely capable of frickin' throwing a fit and not leaving, but it's so unimaginably insane that would happen that I can't see it. I can't imagine it happening, but it could happen.
So maybe another way to frame a similar question for you would be, do you see it being razor thin or undeniable for Biden?
Yeah, man, I don't know. I would hope undeniable. But here's the thing. Even if it is undeniably a win for Biden, Trump's going to spin it and totally make it look razor thin or completely rigged. You know what I mean? And either way, his people are going to believe that because they believe all his other lies. So.
Fuck.
So I think it's razor thin no matter what happens.
Oh man, I just want to know that we will know by like 7 a.m. tomorrow. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be a weeks long fucking.
Yeah, I mean, me neither.
2020 style or 2000 style nightmare. That was weeks, dude. The country watched for weeks and didn't know who won.
Oh, with Bush?
Bush and Gore, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that happened.
Yeah, it was a nightmare.
Because Gore won by the popular vote, right?
Yes, and by the Electoral College, but that's another episode.
Right. That's what I thought. I think it said by 10 Eastern is what all the news places are saying. So,
fuck.
Maybe 3 hours, 2.5 hours.
God be with us.
Yeah, it's scary. I was 15 when Trump was elected. I actually remember the day. Do you remember the day?
Of course.
Yeah, it was
like 9/11. Day after was like 9/11.
Yeah, it did have kind of a weird feeling like that.
I worked in the morning, at the restaurant day after, and everyone was zonked, like a zombie. And I remember my guests asked me, like, "Are you doing okay?" Like everyone was in this, just collective trauma mode. So my question is, if Trump does win, and it is a collective trauma again for the cities, will that emotion be even worse combined with the pandemic and knowing we did it to ourselves again?
Oh yeah, it's going to be so bad because the rest of the world isn't going to forgive us, because the rest of the world's going to go, all right, well, you had your chance to redeem yourselves, now we really know who you are.
Just like W.
Yeah. And it's going to be way worse now that we know, because before we were like, okay, well, maybe he'll just maybe he's being an asshole now and he's being all like a bully, and then maybe he'll just calm down. We'll just kind of forget that he's there and we'll just move on. But it was much worse than we expected. So yeah, it's gonna be a shit show if he wins.
Yeah, my friend said downtown is gonna be on fire if he wins.
Jeez. I think that would be I think the quicker response to, I think an immediate riot situation would happen if Trump wins. I think that a
Yeah.
longer, slower brewing violent situation would happen if Biden wins.
Sure.
I think that we're going to see a lot of, people from the rural areas coming into cities slowly and
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah.
And
There was a con. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was done.
There was a convoy in my parents' town, in my hometown, Northampton, Massachusetts. Northampton is liberal bubble doesn't do it justice. Like Bernie Sanders is the center of Northampton, and you have folks on the left and folks on the right of Bernie, and that's Northampton, and that means that those folks drove in from the hill towns, as we call them, and like occupied.
Yeah.
So yeah, there definitely seems to be. I mean, the organization on the right through, I think, Facebook and, other platforms, it definitely seems like we will see ops. And if Biden does win, it's the way you and I are both predicting, then we will have a loser Trump president for 3 months, and God knows what damage he's capable of in those 3 months.
Yeah. Oh, wait, you're saying you think Trump is going to stay in office for 3 months if Biden wins?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
That's the law.
Right. No, yeah. I understand. Yeah, that's going to be... Actually, I didn't even... For some reason, I keep thinking Trump's gone today. If Biden wins.
Right.
We still got another 3 months. That's scary. That's scary.
I mean, it would be a salty, president.
Oh, man.
Obama sucked it up. He met with Trump. He spent more time with Trump's team than than Bush spent with him. He said, okay, we really need to make this work for the country. Trump doesn't have that bone in his body.
Hell no. Yeah. God. I can't believe people can't see how insane he is.
Well, at least we don't have to wait, man. At least we can just watch the news all night tonight, and it'll just be a steady flow of epic news until we go to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
If we had this podcast yesterday, I'd be butthurt now, because I'd be like, and now we have to do 24 hours of waiting. But nope, it's the game, motherfucking season finale of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Tonight.
Yeah.
The dragons are coming, and everyone's gonna die. So yeah.
Oh my god.
We'll watch.
Well, I'm if Trump loses, we're still gonna have our daily dose of Trump insanity on Twitter probably. So it'll be still kind of some entertainment there. Except our country won't be at stake.
Yeah, if Trump loses, Trump losing is just the prerequisite for humanity making it off this planet within the century. It doesn't mean it actually is a step towards that. It just means you have to get the raccoon off the staircase before the people can walk up it.
Yeah.
And that means that the second we have Biden in, that means, as a nation and as a species, like, the work starts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, back in the Paris Climate Accords, like, everything,
start to fix shit.
Begin. Yeah, scientists in charge of the EPA again.
Yeah.
But that's not moving the country forward. That's not what needs to happen. That's just a prerequisite. That's just clearing off your desk so that the work
it allows us to
be
begin
done.
Again. Yeah. Totally. And I want AOC. I think it should be awesome.
Well, I'm gonna call something here and now.
Okay. I know what you're gonna say.
She streamed Among Us. You know what I'm gonna say. I probably already said it to you.
Yeah.
She streamed Among Us.
Yep.
Now this fall, AOC streamed a party game. There's only one narrative that makes make sense, and that is president.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I'm thinking. I am thinking that behind closed doors, there is an understanding that Biden only wishes to be a one-term president.
I hope so.
And that, there was a rumor that that before he was the nominee, they were going to pitch that to the people. If you nominate Biden, I'm only here to right the ship. Which I actually thought might be a viable strategy. But
that's
the case anyway. That's all he wants. He's been in there. I wouldn't be surprised if he stepped down day one and he was like, actually, I don't want to do this.
Pass it over. Jesus, yeah.
Because I think that look, either of them will be the oldest president in history. So when you pick the VP for the oldest president in history, you pick someone who you're also kind of picking for president, and that's Kamala.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
So,
No, Kamala is awesome.
So I think that puts AOC's race in 2028 when she's 39, not 2024, the year she turns 35. And if you're running in 2028, then you say to yourself, where are the 13-year-olds?
That was their, yeah.
And they're watching Among Us on Twitch.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good breakdown. I didn't think of that until you told me and the other day, and that's exactly what they're thinking, isn't it? And you said she's going to run against Tucker Carlson. Is that what you think?
I think that Tucker's a 2024 or a 2028 threat. Yeah, I do believe that.
Geez, that would be like more insane than Trump.
Yeah, I mean that he's certainly smarter.
Yeah, more dangerous for sure.
Yeah. So that's my thing about not getting too excited about Biden, because it's not as if Trumpism goes away. It's not as if the GOP loses nihilism. It's just like, the first prerequisite.
Yeah, it may just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Man, that would fucking suck. But oh man, I was gonna. Yeah. AOC is president. Kamala.
Tucker.
What if? Oh yeah, Biden stepping down. Okay, is that possible? Could Biden just be like, all right, I'm just gonna pass it to Kamala?
I think not day one, the way I joked. I think that they have an understanding that he's not going to run when he's 84.
Right.
So that means that you do this term with a more empowered Kamala than you would have if you thought he was going to run.
Right.
Right. Like Obama knew he was in there for 8 years. And he needed a VP in Joe.
Yeah.
Joe is going to be an 82-year-old president. And, in my opinion, an 84-year-old ex-president, meaning you let Kamala run more. And your whole administration lets her run more, because not only are you old and somewhat, less full of energy than like a 46-year-old Obama or a legit president should be.
Yeah.
But that she's going to be the next president anyway, so you set it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Other question: why is there not an age cap? Like, what is it? Is it 35?
Yeah, 35.
That's the
an upper age cap.
Why is there not? I mean, I would say personally, I would put it at, let's see, 70.
Yeah.
Because I think that every president should have the possibility of running twice. I think that should be like,
Interesting. Yeah.
It should be a possibility that they can run twice. You should leave that open. Yeah. And I don't want an 80-year-old as president.
Yeah.
Or a 78-year-old.
I think that even if neither party is smart enough to realize this, we have entered an era of a natural age cap, because you need your candidate to be cute, funny, charismatic, and have some movie star energy. And the only reason that Biden is going to beat Trump is because Trump is an imploding nuclear reactor.
Right.
But that, generally speaking, what we learned from Obama, and then the hard way from Hillary, I believe, is that from now on, when we choose a candidate, they need to fit all the old boxes plus a new box, which is, would you hire this person to anchor your Netflix series?
Right.
Would that show make money? And obviously, Obama, you check that box, and he's, historic win. I think, again, we would only get away with it because Trump's such a insanely weak candidate given the pandemic and everything. But I think that parties that don't learn that lesson the candidates that don't fit that box will lose. And therefore, you're not really going to see elderly candidates winning too deep into this century. That's kind of my
I agree.
guess.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wonder if Trump would have won if it wasn't for coronavirus. I mean, I'm already assuming that he's not going to win, but I wonder if it
Yeah.
would have, you know.
I think yes. I think everything. I mean, there was. I mean, arguably, over a dozen events that would have grinded any other presidential term to a halt. That were either he survived or good for him. And I think that the only reason he's going to lose is because coronavirus is uniquely bad for him.
Yeah.
And it's out of all these things where the left said this was going to be bad for him and then it wasn't. This is actually the one that is.
Yeah.
And I think that your question is basically right. Without this cataclysm, we would have had 8 years 100%.
Jeez, that's not even like a relieving thing to think about. That's just because you can imagine. Yeah, God, are we that stupid? Did it really require a frickin' global pandemic to wake some of these people up? It's crazy.
Well, the global pandemic made science denial personal. And climate change is truly personal for no one. I mean, even if your house burned down or if your house got flooded, we're still not at a level of education and sanity where that's a direct emotional connection to climate change. Mm-hmm. In Houston, floods are getting worse, but your granddaddy's house might have flooded too. Like there is a memory of that just being an act of God.
Right.
Corona took science denial and brought it down to the level of almost every person in this country. So
right.
Yeah. That's how I would see that.
Jeez.
Man. Well, I think we should wrap it up. I think we'll be texting all night as shit comes in.
Yeah.
Definitely my phone is going to be on fire due to my whole family losing its shit
you're going to see some
how we do.
You're going to get all the drama. I mean, I'm going to have some drama over here too. Oh, I'm so scared. I'm checking again. No, it still says the same thing.
Yep. No, it's just going to start. They're just going to start to be making projections, I bet, starting in this hour.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, you know what happened unless what happened is a long, drawn-out court battle.
Unless I'm an editing god.
Yeah. I guess either just absorb our naivete and our beautiful innocence before we knew that Trump smashed Biden, and just take that energy and consume it because you need it now, or just bathe in our accurate predictions and our next level analysis and come back for more Boondogglers so you know what will happen next year.
Yeah. Well,
one of those two. Hey,
content either way for us, so we're doing fine. But yeah, Boondogglers was episode 3. Pretty fun, pretty good talk. I am really enjoying doing this. We have different backgrounds now. We're kind of like a little bit more laid back with our situations. But yeah, things are still evolving, and we have big ideas. So stick around.
Hell yeah! See you next week.
Hell yeah! All right, bye guys.